Welcome to the podcast that explores mysterious disappearances, bizarre worldly occurrences, strange phenomenon, and basically everything that's weird. Welcome to the podcast, Everything That's Weird. We're your hosts, Brandon and Anthony. And tonight, we could go round and round about this case.
Go in circles?
We could go in circles. I've actually never been. Have you ever been here?
No. Well, not that I remember.
Yeah, but when I asked Steph, she knew exactly where the place was. It's a place called Circleville, Ohio. We are talking about the Circleville letters, or sometimes they're called the Circleville poison letters.
Right.
So, real quick, sometimes it's called the Circleville poison letters because I guess some of them were written with arsenic.
Yeah, some of them had trace amounts of arsenic. It didn't sound like anything was like nobody got hurt.
The only problem with that, what are you licking the letters?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know how you do that.
I don't either. I don't know how you win. Hey, anthrax, I get.
Yeah.
You just pull that stuff out, you're dead. But like,
there's a lot of funny videos out about the hitman's first time. And he like pours the poison in the drink and then takes his finger to stir it up, and then he sucks his finger. He's like, oh, and fucking done.
That's really funny.
So now we got the very first letter was sent in. There's confliction there too, and I don't know if it's really important, but they say 76 in a lot of it,
which is when we were born.
But when I find out is that it was 77. Like it seems like it was 77 and not 76. I don't know if that's important, but that it is either 76 or 77. The first letter goes to Mary Gillespie.
I think probably the first important thing to like let everybody know, there wasn't the internet. So like people used to send people letters.
Right. All the time.
All the time. So Mary Gillespie, but you're right, it says, so I'm reading this one, it says March 3rd of 77.
Yeah, right? That's weird, right?
But then everybody else said late 76. Okay, whatever. Sometime in that time, Mary Gillespie, who is a bus driver living in Circleville, Ohio, receives a letter. And the letter basically, it's not a blackmail letter, but it's kind of a, hey, watch it, bitch letter.
Yeah, they accuse her of having an affair with the superintendent of schools, Gordon Maddie.
So is he Clinton Massey?
I don't know.
I don't either, right? Is he the Massey of Clinton Massey?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, fine, whatever. Clinton Massey's a school district. Anyway.
I mean, there's probably some family tie there. You know,
because Gordon Maddie is like, he's kind of like, he's like held in a high regard in the community, right?
Yeah.
So he's sort of like, well,
until the letter.
Until the letter, right? Up until this time, he's kind of like like a model administrator for the school district. And she gets this letter, and it says, "I know you and Massey are seeing each other." So she kind of doesn't say anything about.
It's very threatening. It's
way threatening.
Yeah, and it says we know you have children.
Right.
If you don't end this, and you need to tell on him and cut it off the affair. We know you have children. We're watching your house. It's a very threatening letter.
So we should say there's thousands of letters.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah.
Eventually, right? There's no way we could go into them. There's no way we could cover everything in this case in like an hour.
No.
So we'll kind of just cliff note it. All right. So she gets a few letters. She doesn't do anything with them. She kind of just hides them. And then her husband gets one.
Yeah, and it tells them that they'd sent her letters and she ignored them, and that she was cheating with this Gordon Massey. And I heard that in his letter it said you should catch them together and kill them both.
Right. And he's like, "What's up?" She's like, "Okay, I got 2 of these letters. I didn't say anything because it's not true."
Right.
But like, yeah, this guy or this girl, they don't know. It could be a guy or a girl. Sent the letters, and it's like in this block writing, which is really, it's not really block writing, but it is like a certain style.
Yeah, somebody's trying to hide their natural handwriting.
Right.
And they put these big tall letters, block letters.
So then she thinks it's this guy named David Longberry, who's a fellow bus driver of hers, who's kind of like been flirting with her. And she's kind of shunned his advances. And she thinks that because of that, he's angry.
Yeah, well, they call a family meeting. They call their closest friends and family is what they do, and to discuss it.
Right, which is okay. So Paul, there's a lot of like white people names. So like Paul is Paul Freshour,
and his wife
Karen Freshour. Right. All right, Karen is Ron Gillespie's sister. Ron is Mary's husband.
Correct.
They all have a meeting.
Also, Paul's sister is there.
Okay, what's her name?
I never got her name because it didn't seem important. She's just, as far as I know,
she's just there.
Yeah, she's there. I think she comes in later in interviews, but she's really only important to this part of the story, I think, where she's at this family meeting where they think they know who did this, and so they're going to write some scathing letters to this person to get him to stop harassing.
Kind of like an equally threatening letter, right?
Yeah.
And part of the reason is because he mentions her bus driving ID.
Yeah, that's in part of the letters he puts her exact bus ID number now.
Right. Which she's like, it's like 62917. And the letter writer, I shouldn't say he, references that. So they kind of think it's him. Okay, so they write their own set of letters. And then nothing happens for a while, right?
Yeah, they think they took care of it.
But then it's not just letters. They also get like phone calls.
Well, one night, Ron, because I found out later that Mary Gillespie and Paul's wife, Karen, Ron's sister, and a group of other women were on their way to Florida. So
for a girls' trip.
Yep, and Ron was home with the kids, and he got a phone call, and the kids, according to the children, that his disposition completely changed when he got this phone call. He was up and alert, and he looked distraught, and when he got off the phone, he ran up and he got his gun, and he went back to him and said he was going to take care of this letter writing thing, and he kissed his daughter on the head, and he ran out the door and got in his truck and drove off.
Which, that's not a good way to leave the house.
I don't know. You're like, you know what I'm going to get them, kids.
Right. You shouldn't.
Give me a kiss.
This is the 70s. But as a parent, and I'm definitely not anybody to tell anyone else how to parent, but you shouldn't tell your kids You're going to avenge your adulterous wife. Reputation with the gun.
Oh shit!
It's not a good look.
No.
So anyway, he does.
It's very 70s.
It's very 70s. So he has his 22.
I mean, the only thing I could have made that more 70s if he did like a lineup blow before he grabbed his revolver.
Right. But he's kind of straight edge, even though he works at Anheuser-Busch. Well, hold on. We're gonna all right. First of all, also, is it him? He was the prison guard. Or is it Paul?
I think it was Ron. I think earlier on.
So he was a prison guard, and then he was in an extra movie. He was an extra in a movie with Robert Redford.
Yes.
This fucking story. So then, that's just a complete side note. It has nothing to do with the story. But then at some point he leaves and becomes like a controller manager at like Anheuser-Busch.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't drink, right?
Yeah, it's not.
Everybody says he's not a drinker.
He's not a drinker.
Like occasionally socially, but like not really. He's not a heavy drinker. So anyway,
he takes off into the night with his gun in a very fatherly manner. He kisses his kids before he cocks the pistol and runs out the door. And then he apparently crashed and it killed him.
Right by his house, right?
Yeah, it wasn't far. It wasn't long. Apparently, it wasn't too long after he went out the door. So there wasn't a lot of time frame there.
So Paul Freshour talks to the sheriff, this guy named Radcliffe. Mm-hmm. And he says, this is weird, right? Mm-hmm. And Radcliffe's like, yeah, totally weird. He's like, his gun was fired. We can tell his gun was fired.
Yeah.
Like, was he chasing somebody? What happened? Well, and then...
And the sheriff said that it looked like foul play to him.
So then he kind of gets, like, the toxicology back. And he's like, oh, no. The sheriff's... No. He's just wasted.
Completely changes his story.
Yeah. He's like, no. He's just hammered.
None of it's suspicious. He was just drinking some beers and firing off his gun and wrecked. Yeah.
And that's weird for everybody in his family because they're like, yeah, that's not his style.
Well, beyond the fact that he wasn't a drinker, the toxicology showed that he was twice the legal limit. And they were like, that's even crazier that he would be twice the legal limit. Like, to him have a drink is one thing, but to him be like hammered is completely different.
So, I wanted to get a breathalyzer at our bar. And our lawyer is like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I was like, it'd be fun to see how drunk you are. And he's like, absolutely not.
Nope.
No. You do not want people being like, I blew X on that machine and then got my car and driven. And I was like, oh yeah, when you say it that way.
Yeah.
But
not to mention that some people are just gonna go up and blow on it, see where they're at, and be like, yeah, and then you're gonna serve them again.
But I have been to a place that had that. That's why I did that. That's why I even thought about it. And I have to admit, man, I've been that. I've been. Now I wasn't driving,
right?
But 1.6, if you drink, is like,
it's like being
pretty buzzed.
Yeah, you're pretty buzzed. You're not hammered. You're not blackout. But
when they say twice the legal limit, okay, the legal limit. First of all, if you're listening to this episode, it's illegal to drink and drive. Period.
Do not drink and drive.
No, it is. That's what a lot of people don't understand. They think,
yeah, it is.
They think, I can have 2 or 3. No, you can't have 1 beer. You're not allowed to drink and drive. Period. Yeah. Okay. But there's like this allowance that some cops will just say, okay, you're fine, go ahead and go, you know, but they can still give you a DUI under like the legal limit, which in Ohio is 0.8, right? 0.08?
0.08.
Okay, so 0.16 is, it used to be 0.1.
I think it's the same in Indiana and Kentucky as well.
Okay, so it used to be 0.1. And 0.1's like you've been drinking.
You've been having a good time. You're
having fun. 0.16 is you've been drinking, and an experienced drinker, that's no problem.
Right.
But 0.16 for somebody that doesn't drink, you're hammered.
Yeah, you're pretty drunk. If
you're drunk.
Yeah.
You're like you can't handle it. So I could see why he would say, oh, well, he's hammered. Right. It's also the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a comedian talk about, he was like, you know, George Bush got a DUI. He's like, in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, to get a DUI in the 70s.
Yeah. You got to be hammered.
You have to be hammered with the propeller hat on and like out of your mind.
And they'll still probably drive you home.
Right. Because that was the time when they would just drive you home. So we were right out of that time. Like when we grew up,
they stopped giving you fucking rides.
They started giving you rides to jail.
Yeah.
Well, when we were
half the time they didn't even do that, they fucking arrest you, take you up the fucking road, and transfer you to somebody else who was heading that way.
Yeah, so we didn't get that, but my brother, who's 7 or 8 years older than us, they used to just take them home.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be like, "Come on, man, get in," and they'd leave your car. If I see you driving tonight, you're going to jail. Mm-hmm. And they'd drive him home. Now that's completely unheard of.
Yeah.
So he dies.
Yeah.
And then she starts an affair with Gordon Maddie. And they both claim that this never happened until the letters.
After the letters started.
Right.
Which everybody's got a problem with that, but we'll talk about it in the next section. But honestly, anytime you force two people together, no matter what the circumstance, you never know what sparks are going to fly once you do that. So, yeah. Because there's going to be some point where she's going to talk to him, you know, even if she wasn't having an affair. You're like, can you believe this? Is this really?
And then they have like a commonality.
You're like, God damn,
you're hot.
Yeah. I don't know. I tried to speed that up.
So the letters don't stop though when he dies.
No. No, in fact, because she admits to that, but not only do the letters not stop, they increase in volume. There's letters getting sent out even when the sheriff does that initial turnaround on his findings, letters go out about how corrupt the sheriff is. And there was letters about the prosecutor and letters about the judges and letters and literally everybody in Central Ohio, they said, got some letter at some point. Like there was people all over Central Ohio, not just Circleville, but all over Central Ohio that were getting letters. And they started, Mary Gillespie was driving her school bus and she started noticing signs on the side of the road. Now, apparently the sign thing, from what I understand now, is that it started happening before Ron died.
And no, I didn't hear that.
Ron used to go around and pull them.
Yeah, you're right. I did hear this. Right.
So that she wouldn't see him on the bus and the kids wouldn't see him. Or his daughter wouldn't see him about his mom, saying shit about his mom.
So there's a lot of like Dateline and clear, like full transparency. Dateline did something on this. I listened to that podcast. Unsolved Mysteries. Did a thing about it, which they also Unsolved Mysteries got a letter that said don't write about it. Right.
Yep.
Right. But a lot of people have done this, and There's really not
Unsolved
one
Mysteries decided they were
detailed.
going to go in there, and they got a postcard that said, "Stay away from it. Stay away from Sheriff Radcliffe," and called them El Sickos.
Yeah,
I don't know what that's about.
I don't either.
You El Sickos better stay away or something.
Well, I think
like
it was because like a nod to the El Camino.
Oh, maybe.
Okay,
Anyway,
so
we'll get there.
We'll get there. So, all right. So there's signs, and you're right. I did hear that Ron used to go around and collect. And then
They would collect
signs,
them up, but the signs never stopped after he died, and
they were more. They started being directed towards her daughter.
Yeah, that's when that shit got real.
So she sees one of these signs where she has like kids on the bus, stops the bus, gets out, and goes to rip down one of the signs. And there's like a box behind the sign.
Yeah, like with a piece of string hanging out of it. She can't make any sense of it, so she just grabs it and takes it and puts it up on the bus with her, and then finishes her route.
And the best way we can describe it, it's like a Wile E. Coyote type of
little
right
setup. Yeah, there's like
a gun in a box pointed at the sign, so when you rip the sign down, it fires and shoots you.
Yeah,
except she pulls it down at the wrong angle.
Yeah, it's almost like if you can imagine like a crossbow, and the bow part is the sign, and then the box is like the handle, and that box had a gun in it with a piece of twine that ran to the back of the sign, so that when she'd come up and rip the sign down, the gun would go off and shoot her. But apparently she like pushed up on the sign and broke the top of it completely off.
So
Instead
right around
of pulling the sign down and shooting herself.
So right around this time, Karen Freshour, who is Ron Gillespie's sister, and Paul Freshour are going through like a divorce.
Correct.
And it's a terrible divorce.
Yeah, it's not a good one.
And Karen is like on the short end of everything. Like she doesn't get the kids, the house, right? And she does not like the fact that she's getting divorced, even though she's the reason they're getting divorced. She had an affair.
Yeah, and she's living in a trailer on Mary Gillespie's property.
Right. So, okay.
So she gets the sign, she takes it to the police. Yeah, and the police investigate this thing, and the gun inside it, and they every single thing I looked at said the same thing, that somebody amateurishly tried to get rid of the serial number. So it's very important, I guess, to everybody that this was an amateur job at trying to get the serial numbers off the gun. But the police were able to trace the gun. The gun comes back to none other than Paul Freshour.
Right. So it's Ron Gillespie's brother.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, my gun's been in my garage. It's been stolen a couple times. It could have been stolen. I don't know. So he was on Unsolved Mysteries. I thought this was stupid when I heard it. I'm like, well, he did it. Until I saw his interview, and he's like, I had a bunch of guns in my garage. He's like, it could have gone missing anytime. He's like, in fact, it did go missing. I knew it was missing, and I asked people to help me because I had so many guns around my garage, help me locate it. So that could have been like a forced alibi.
Yeah.
Or like the guy, when he talks, it's just, especially when it comes to this point, and we know people like this, and maybe you're like this, maybe you're listening, you're like this. Some people just don't think guns are a big deal.
Yeah. Some
people just, like, my roommate in California was from a really small town outside of Dayton. And one night we're talking guns. And he's like, I mean, I got guns. And we're like, you have a gun here? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I mean, I got multiple guns. We're like how many? He's like, I have no idea. I'm like, you have no idea how many guns you have? And he's like, no.
Man, I grew up with people like that.
He went in his closet and he just started pulling out cases. He had like 45 guns.
You had no idea?
He's like, I got that one for my birthday. My dad gave me that one. My brother traded me that one for another one. He like, everyone had a story, but like they were all different caliber, different kind of gun. There was a reason he had it. Yeah. Like some of them were, flintlocks that you could never, that don't make any modern sense to fire at somebody.
Right.
Some of them are like muzzle loaders. Some are rifles. Some are shotguns. Some are handguns. And he just had guns. Just as many guns.
Right.
If there was an apocalypse, like we would go to his closet because like he had and just stacks of ammunition. And we're like, dude, sometimes you don't have the money for the cable bill. Like you have $30,000 worth of ammunition and guns. And he just didn't think it was a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I grew up. I mean, that's how I grew up. I grew up around people that had guns coming out there everywhere. So I don't want to tell any of the stories.
But my dad had a gun. But
yeah,
like,
we had tons of guns when I was young.
We lived in the suburbs, so like it wasn't like there's no need to have. Like, I know where you live. You should, right? But like we lived in the suburbs, so it's like we knew my dad had a gun. Yeah. That was it. Like there wasn't like he told
when
me
we were little, when we were young, me and my brothers weren't allowed to have a BB gun because my mom knew we would shoot each other's eyes out, but we were allowed to have a 410. And I fucked up because we knew proper gun safety. So like she knew we would be careful with a 410, but we would shoot each other with a BB gun.
And I do have to say that everybody that I know that has guns, like gun safety is like number one.
Yeah, it's always loaded.
I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody that has a ton of guns that they don't give you a talking to,
right,
before you handle the gun.
Right.
They're like, all right, first of all, hold on.
Yeah.
So when he gives this interview, he's kind of got that disposition.
Yeah.
That's why, like...
it didn't bother me when he said it. Like, yeah, I get that. You could have a gun go missing and not realize it was missing for a long time. My dad had one go missing, didn't realize it was missing for a long time, but ended up being my oldest brother. It's a long story.
So I used to go to Target World, and I was part of a gun club. And I used to play poker, and they would give you, like, a sheet, and they had random 52 cards, right? Random on a sheet. You get like 15 seconds to look at it, and then they slide it back, right? And then you shoot, and whoever has the best hand wins that round, right? And so I was telling this guy from Outback who happened to be like a game warden about this, and he's like, oh, you can use my gun. And I'm like, okay, totally. I'm like 22 or whatever. I took it, used it, blah, blah. He came, got it from wherever I met him. And fast forward like 20 years, we're at the bar, and he's in there. And I'm like, hey, man, how are you? It's good to see you. It's been a long time, right? And he's like, I know. He's like, nice bar, thanks, blah, blah. He's like, hey, you remember I gave you that gun? And I'm like, no. He's like, yeah. I gave you the gun, and then you gave it back to me that one time. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now, because I completely forgot that, like, he let me borrow his gun. I'm like, what are you doing? Trying to set me up for a fucking murder?
Right, is it shakedown?
No, I gave you the gun. You remember that, right? And I'm like, no, you didn't. What are you talking? What are you fucking talking about? He's like, you were playing. It was like poker or something at Target World. I'm like, oh yes, I do now. So anyway, his gun it goes missing,
Mhm.
and when they go to look at the serial number, it's his gun.
Yeah. And then so the sheriff's talking to him, and what the sheriff does is he has him sit down and copy as close as he can one of the actual Circleville letters.
I can't believe this is allowed.
I can't believe he did it.
I can't believe he did it either.
That's the fucking dumbest thing I've ever heard. Are you out of your mind insane? No, I'm not going to rewrite that letter as close as I can. I'm an artist. I will recreate that letter. I'm not going to do it, though, you know? I'm like, no, I'm not. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
And then
he dictates to him, right?
Then he gets charged.
Yeah, because
they're like,
his handwriting match.
Because his handwriting match. They're like, yeah, it's his gun. His handwriting matches. They charge him. It's like a My Cousin Vinny.
This is so bad. Yeah,
I killed the clerk. I killed the clerk.
Yeah.
Like you said, I killed the clerk. The 2 youths. And so then when they ask him, well, are these the samples of the handwriting that you used? He's like, no, not those. These other ones that he dictated to him.
Yeah, because he couldn't give him the ones that he had him copy directly.
And then he gets convicted.
Yeah.
So they don't convict him.
He never takes the stand either.
Well, that's a lot of times, yeah, that could backfire. But I almost understand that. But so they also bring up the letters, but they don't convict him for being the letter writer.
No, they only convicted him for the attempted murder charge for the device in the box.
And he goes to jail.
7 to 24.
And he ends up doing 7 years. He goes to parole. They deny him parole.
Because the entire time he's locked up, the letters keep coming.
And the warden...
he said there's no way.
The warden's like, there's absolutely no way he's writing letters.
We're reading his mail, people.
They're like, we're reading his mail. He's not allowed to have a pen.
We turn his bed. We fucking put our fingers in his butt.
He's not allowed to have a paper or pen or a pencil.
They said a lot of the times it was like he was in solitary confinement.
Yeah.
I was like, Jesus Christ. They were trying to lock him down so that no letters could get out, and there were still letters coming. He was getting letters in jail.
So then when he gets denied parole, he actually gets a letter.
Parole because of the amount of letters that were still going.
And then they deny him. This is how fucked up our justice is. They deny him parole because there's letters that still keep going out. But then he gets a letter.
Yeah.
They send him a letter and somehow he gets it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, didn't you think?
Yeah, so
what did we
warned
tell
you 2 years ago, when she gets set up, once we set somebody up, they stay set up. Said once we set somebody up, they stay set up. Just the most ridiculous thing in the world, though. Now you sit in front of the parole board going, but I was in here. I was right here.
I was under your custody.
That guy's finger still smells like poop. They know I didn't have nothing on me, man. I was writing their letters, bro.
All right, so the letters keep coming. They keep coming. He finally gets paroled in what, 93?
Yeah, he's like 10. He did like 10 and a half years.
Okay. So he gets paroled in like 93.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime in this is another thing I've had a hard time locking in. It's either 94 or the late 90s where the letters stop.
Yeah, it's 94. It was right when he gets paroled.
Yeah, I hear that, but then I've heard a lot of people say it's late 90s.
I think I thought he got paroled in like 93 or 4. Okay,
so
because it was 83 that the incident occurred. So it was close to 94 or whatever when he got out, and then the letters just stopped.
Okay, and then that's kind of it, right?
Yep, that's the story.
Okay, well then probably this is a good place to stop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's stop here and we'll go to the facts of the case.
Yep.
If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Okay, so, man, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
So let's just kind of talk about suspects.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right off the bat, it's the very first person that comes up as a suspect. His name was David Longberry. He was the bus driver that was with Mary Gillespie that like kind of hit on her. Mm-hmm. And she like shunned his advances. Mm-hmm. And everybody thought that's who Ron got the phone call from. Mm-hmm. They kind of thought it was him collectively. Mm-hmm. And he's not a good guy.
No. There's a lot of bad people in this story.
He rapes an 11-year-old girl while her grandparents are home and then goes on the run. And a lot of people say he's still on the run to this day, but he's not. I guess U.S. Marshals tracked him somewhere in like Texas, and they found that he hung himself in 99 because he was running away from the charge. But like, he had a history with like this type of behavior. But that's really all we got about him.
Yeah.
So the FBI does get involved at some point, or they refuse to, and they end up, somebody that used to work for the FBI ends up doing a profile of the writer, and they can't tell the sex of the writer. But they all say there's like three different analyses, and they all say that Paul Freshour's handwriting matches the letters, but they kind of made him do that.
Well, I still don't get that. It's
I still don't either.
I'm like,
so then there's,
because he had him warm up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He had him warm up to like draw this as exactly as you can. He goes, now exactly the same way you drew those. Do what I tell you, and he just read the letters, the actual letters, and it's like you made him practice, and then you had him write that way.
And by the way, handwriting analysis is not an exact science.
No,
it's an opinion.
Yeah.
Well,
but court cases have gone against it several times because other evidence overruled it. So
then Gordon Massey didn't write the letters.
No, but some say his son did.
Right, because he had multiple affairs.
Yes, apparently he made advances to a lot of chicks, and there was one of the letters he received, I heard, said, "You were messing with my girl." So It was like, it wasn't even like a Circleville letter. It was almost just like somebody else just taking advantage of the letter writing and said, hey, you were messing with my girlfriend, and I heard you've been messing with a bus driver too. Back off or else, blah, blah, blah. So he got threatened about, and he brought up Mary while he was talking about his girlfriend. So there's at least two right there in that one letter. But he had been accused of a few more too. And so some say that maybe it was his son sticking up for his mom. Wrote the letters.
And so there's also another thing that said Paul Freshour's son may have been responsible for trying to kill.
Might have stole the gun. Yeah.
Right.
Because he had remarked to somebody else that
he had stolen it before?
Yeah. That he had stolen it before.
Okay, that's just like a side note. Nobody really connects him to anything else.
You can find details about that. Paul Freshour maintained like a blog on the internet for like 20 years or something like that. And I got on there and I started looking at some of the stuff he had wrote, and he does hit on his son and that gun.
So from what I've heard about that is that it really doesn't answer anything. It just kind of adds more questions.
Yeah. Because I don't know, unless that kid was watching a lot of Wile E. Coyote.
Right?
I don't know.
Okay, so then you have the prosecutor.
Because it was pretty crudely made. They said that. It was very crudely made.
So then you have the prosecutor. Okay, so hold on. Let's go to the sheriff first.
Yeah.
So then you have the sheriff, who...
It was ruler supreme. This dude was in office for a long time. He was actually the longest active sheriff, running tenured sheriff in the country.
So, okay. The reason that's important is because he ended up getting some kind of crazy high position for sheriffs, right?
Yeah, he was running for the National Association of Sheriffs or whatever.
Okay,
president.
Some people think because of this, he had to bury it because their crime rate would have been like through the roof. Because Circleville's a tiny town.
Yeah. If you're counting all those as offenses.
And it would have put the crime rate through the roof, and he wouldn't have qualified to be in this position.
Right. If you were to qualify those as individual crimes.
Right. Okay. That's him. Now, the prosecutor... who ends up taking the case.
Well, here's this is crazy. Just to hit on Sheriff Radcliffe a little bit more. His father was sheriff for 30 years before he took over. And then he took over and was sheriff for 40 years. And then when he retired, his son took over until 2020 when he was beat out in an election. It was the first time since 1931 somebody in their family wasn't the sheriff.
That's how it works, man. There's small towns.
Hey, their mom, also a deputy.
God damn it. God damn it. Well, I mean,
his wife was a deputy. They got a picture of them, all three of them in their Hamilton or their sheriff's outfits.
We're from Cincinnati, and if you're familiar with the Larry Flint, like the People versus Larry Flint, Simon Lease has been, well, he's not anymore, but he was the sheriff forever. I mean, he since Larry Flint was in the news till the 2000s. So so that's not hard to understand.
Yeah, and because those sheriffs, man, they pull some trickeration there. They get money.
And
they clean up.
I've heard
Simon Lease was charging rent at the Justice Center.
I know.
There's a class action lawsuit later to get money back if you went to jail in certain time frame when Simon Lease was charging rent.
And I've heard like in smaller counties and like Tennessee and Kentucky, like the sheriff runs everything.
Yeah, the sheriff does. And
it's like a mafia boss.
Well, what they do is I heard the if you're the sheriff, the good way to make money was you're in charge of like the food for the prisons.
Yes.
And then they make backdoor deals on like cheap ass food and serve it like multiple times a day, and then they pocket all because anything you left over in your budget goes to you.
Yep.
So they just fucking pocket it all.
All right. So that's Radcliffe. Then there's Roger Klein, who's the prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
So he had his own thing.
Yeah, like apparently he knocked up a
teacher,
and then
murdered her,
and covered it up,
and he became a judge.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And they say that all this stuff was like them covering up because they said that they didn't give them full disclosure on all the letters. There was thousands of them, and they said a lot of them were based on allegations against Klein and Radcliffe, and they buried those so they didn't see them, because even when Paul had his own handwriting expert go in to look at the letters, and he was guided by their handwriting expert.
Right.
So he was only given.
And then he ended up being a terrible witness for Paul.
Yeah. Killed him.
He actually was like, he's
the guy.
Which, by the way, don't ever get that kind of witness for you.
Yeah.
But
no, like
Venmo,
one
PayPal. One of the letters said they were threatening to expose a baby fetus that had been buried, right?
Yeah, that was the teacher.
God damn it, that's so dark.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then you have Paul Freshour, who could have been the guy that wrote the letters. The thing with him is he's not really related to anybody. So he's not Ron Gillespie's brother. He's Ron Gillespie's brother-in-law.
Right.
And
he was married to Ron Gillespie's sister.
Right. So he has no relation to Mary Gillespie.
Yeah. So he wouldn't be mad about an affair, but Karen might. Right.
Then you get to Karen.
Yep.
Karen had a lot of reasons to be mad.
Mm-hmm.
So when they profiled her, they said it was somebody that probably wasn't educated. And I beg to differ on that because
you're still alluding.
There's still nobody knows who you are, right?
Yeah.
And they were smart enough to mail the letters in a city where you couldn't track it.
Yep.
So I don't know. I wouldn't be so quick to judge and say people were, but a lot of times the reason they said that was because a lot of times it sounded like they didn't know what they were talking about, or they were like they had bad grammar or whatever. But that could have just been like the El Sickos when it's like a reference to the El Camino, you know?
Yeah.
So
now that's apart from Martin Yant, who's an investigative journalist or whatever, and he was checking out this story, and he dug in and found out that there was another bus driver who was ahead of Mary like by 20 minutes, and when she drove past the place where the sign was, there was a yellow El Camino parked off the side of the road, and
with a guy that looked nothing like Paul.
Yeah, she describes the guy was a big guy with sandy hair, and Paul Freshour at the time was not a big guy. and he had dark black hair. So it wasn't even close. Now at the time though, they were going through a divorce.
He had a yellow El Camino, right?
And Karen Sue's boyfriend, after the divorce, matches the description of the guy she saw on the side of the road. Mm-hmm. And they also say that one of her brothers, her cousin, had a yellow El Camino. There was somebody in the family that had a yellow El Camino, and Karen Sue's.
So that gets real diluted for me, though, also, because, like, I mean, fine. Like, my cousin's wife is cheating. She's like, can you kill him? I'd be like, no.
Yeah.
You're too far removed for me to give a shit.
Right?
So then there's one that's kind of obvious. And nobody ever... A few people touched on it. That it's Mary Gillespie that wrote the letters.
Yeah.
Because she was unhappy in her marriage. She really did like Gordon Massey. She ends up sleeping with him. And this was kind of her way to, like, kind of put it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then put it out there, and then kind of, then her husband dies, quote unquote. And she ends up hooking up with him. But they don't stay together. I have to say, at first I thought it was Mary. At the very first thing I thought, I'm like, well, it's her. She wrote the letters.
Well, it's fair to say this too. I did see that 48 Hours also did a special on it.
Yes.
And they had their own expert,
right, for
handwriting, and she told them that she didn't want to hear the story at all. Like,
right. And she said it was Paul, right?
She said, yeah. She said she would go into court and testify that it was Paul.
So
that wrote all the letters. She said all of them. Well, they all the ones that they gave her.
They tested other writings of Paul's.
Yeah.
Okay.
She
not the ones that the sheriff, not the sheriff's.
Not the sheriff's shit. They just gave her the letters, and they gave her a bunch of different handwriting from different people involved, I think is how it went. And then she was like, it's definitely him.
And I guess what it was it had to do with, there was the G looked like a 6.
Yeah.
Is what she said. And that was what
she said, numbers don't lie.
Right, and the G does look like a 6. So you can see all these letters online. But I mean, do we hit everybody?
I think so. I mean,
okay, but as of right now, there isn't, like, nobody's been charged with this.
No.
And I don't know what you would be charged with.
And Paul Freshour died in 2012, denying to his death that he had anything to do with any of it.
And he might be in that group with Bob Lazar, where, like, he's so good at telling the story. But, like, honestly, he's a very believable person. I almost can't believe he got convicted.
I can't, because it was the dumbest thing I ever heard. Fucking agreeing to write.
Right? Yeah, that. But, like, when you see him on Unsolved Mysteries, he's like, till the day I died, I was trying to find. Or he's like, till the day I die, I want to find out who did this.
Yeah, and he did say he wanted to find out what happened to his ex-brother-in-law.
Right, and he even said he's not even part of my family.
Yeah.
It has nothing. I've moved on. I guess he got remarried. Did he get remarried?
Yeah, apparently he was doing pretty good. He got remarried.
And then, so he didn't even care.
No, he was just saying, you should be looking into it. Somebody should care. Somebody should be checking into it. I think it's shady. So you want to get into what we think?
Let's get into what we think. You want to get first?
No.
You want me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm going to go with a combination. Mm-hmm. I think it was Mary Gillespie that started the letters. I think she started it because she was unhappy in her marriage. A lot of people had said she was unhappy in her marriage before they got... Like, nobody was like, they were happy in their marriage at all. Mm-hmm. I think she was having an affair with Gordon Maddie. And she cut it off and said, I'm married. I can't do this, right? And then... she kind of concocted a way to like make this happen. Mm-hmm. Okay. Then I think her sister-in-law sort of picked up on this. Either she confided in her sister-in-law, and that's kind of what I think happened. Because girls do this shit. They'll confide in each other and they'll say, hey, don't say shit, but this is what's going down. And, it's bro code for us. But girl code's the same thing, And they won't say shit, man.
Right. A
lot of times girls run their mouth. They don't. Girls don't say shit when it's about certain things. Like your wife or girlfriend. This goes to every guy out there. They all know how big your dick is. All of them. They all do. All of them do. Just the same way that your buddies know, like how you have sex with your wife or girlfriend. They all know. Everybody knows. But nobody says anything because that's the social contract that you sign up for. Right? Right? You be cool, man. Don't say shit. Right? So I think it started with Mary, it continued with Karen, and then I kind of think a lot of people hopped on this train because they all the letters don't look like this. And everybody had some sort of agenda to push. Like Mary didn't care about, Roger Klein, the prosecutor. Mm-hmm. She didn't even know, Mm-hmm. As far as I've found. Same with Karen. She didn't know anything about Sheriff Radcliffe. Mm-hmm. But, her letters did, she did tell Mary Gillespie that she saw Paul's some written letters in the toilet. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that was I don't know why they allowed that at trial. That should be hearsay, right?
Right.
There was no physical evidence that they found these ripped up letters in the toilet at Paul's house.
Yeah.
Yet she told Mary. And because she told Mary goes on the stand. Prosecutor asked her, did she tell you that she found out ripped up letters in the toilet? She says yes. Okay. But Karen had everything to gain. And Paul had everything to lose. And that really should have been called hearsay. I'm surprised he never appealed. Mm-hmm. And I never found anything that said he appealed, because everything I found said he didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see anything about it.
But the fact that Mary had Karen living on her property kind of makes me think those two, like, they didn't cook it up. But, like, we're in on it.
Yeah.
Either unknowingly or knowingly. And it's kind of a clever way to get out of your marriage or to expose the cheating. You know, like, and you said, when you force two people together and they sleep together, that did give, like, a benefit of the doubt for a lot of people, because you could see that, right? So, like, you're two people in a like situation, and you're both, you know, because Mary Gillespie was good looking. And Gordon Maddie, not a bad looking dude, right? Right? And they hook up. So, like, people understand when that happens. But if you're already married, he's already married, then it's like, come on, you're the one that, like, you instigated this. So I kind of feel like it started out with Mary Gillespie. Karen saw the benefit of it. Karen Freshour. She got, because she ended up getting everything from Paul. She got, like, his retirement. She got, like, the house. She got everything because he was in jail.
Right.
And then maybe people along the way, you know, use that as their platform. And probably entangled in that.
You mean to explain the volume? How many letters there were?
Yeah, and maybe in that was that David Longberry. Because he was an initial suspect. They did talk to him. And then, you know, he had his own agenda. Because, like, out of nowhere, the head prosecutor gets accused of getting a teacher pregnant and killing the teacher, which that teacher murder is unsolved.
Right.
To this day.
Yeah.
And then he calls out the sheriff for, like, having to, like, bury this because he wouldn't have been appointed to, like, this high position that he was appointed to. So, like, that doesn't really make sense for Mary and Karen to do that, but it does for, like, David Longberry. And then he goes on the run. And then they don't really, it's not that they don't go after him, but, like, nobody finds him. Like, a lot of people thought he was still on the run, but he had killed himself. I definitely don't think it's Paul Freshour.
Right.
I really don't. I really don't, because, like, he's so removed from the situation. Like, not only is it not his family in any regard,
right,
they're all in-laws to him.
Yeah.
But, like, seeing him give his, like, explanation about what happened, I totally believe him. Like, I'm surprised he didn't take the stand, because if I was his lawyer, I would have grilled him for, like, 5 hours and just see what I was dealing with. And maybe he did. But, like, you know, the way he told it on Unsolved Mysteries, he's like, yeah, it was my gun. I don't know how that happened. It was in my garage. I don't know when it was missing. He's like, but at some point I did know it was missing. I even asked people to help me find it. These people were like, yeah, he did ask me to help him find it. and that may be, like, convenience, but I don't know, man.
So you think it was like a whole bunch of people?
I think it started out with Mary.
And then
it started out with Mary and Karen. Right. So it started out with Mary, and it was very effective because her husband died.
Yeah.
And then she kind of got what she wanted, was this relationship with Gordon
Bang
Massey.
Gordon Massey.
And then Karen's like, yeah, this works.
Like to create a scandal.
She sent some more. And then this David Montgomery guy, who probably was the basis of the first set of letters, was like, yeah, because these guys came after him and he knew some like dirt on them. I think it was like a vehicle of, opportunity. And several different people that's why all the letters aren't the same. They're not all written the same. They're not all in the same grammar.
Okay.
They're not all in the same handwriting. And it was like this vehicle for people to like kind of get what they wanted.
All right.
So that's what I think.
All right. What I agree with almost everything you said. Honestly, I think you're right on track. I think the only difference is that I believe the first two letters to Mary were written from the Gordon Massey's son. And I think that when she got those two letters and she just ignored them, but then when she thought about it, that's when she thought, you know what, this is a perfect opportunity. And then take in what you said. And she wrote her husband a letter. That's why his looked different than her too.
Yeah, I didn't account for the son. I probably should have.
I think you're right though. I think it was a opportunity for her to create a scandal, and it, even if she was if everybody's like, it doesn't make sense that they would conveniently have this affair after the first letters were wrote.
Yeah, because let's be honest. Do you think that happened after?
Well, I think it did because I think she set it to stage. I think she put it in place. I think she wrote the letter. You think
she wanted to sleep with Gordon?
And
she wanted to sleep with Gordon Massey.
Yeah. And she wanted to create this controversy where they would meet each other.
Well, that's a maybe.
It worked.
It did work. If that's the case, it did work.
It was a pretty good scheme. But then I think it was her talking to Karen and talking about being unhappy, and then Karen was picking up on that vibe, like I'm unhappy as well. And I think her and her boyfriend set her fucking ex-husband up to go to jail for attempting to kill Mary.
What she did.
Yeah. And I think it was just like they just probably could have just made a box and gave it to Mary and say, tell them you found this on the side of the road. And
I will say, that's the other thing. Why would you ever say, if you're Paul, if you didn't do this, they're not my family? Like, he literally said that.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah.
Okay, let me put it. If it was my wife and her cousin, husband, right? Got convicted, I would be like, hey man, he didn't do it. Like, he's not even my family. I don't care.
Yeah.
But that's literally what he said.
Yeah.
So did we solve it?
I think we did.
I think it's solved. I think it's a vehicle
of
a lot of people, of opportunity.
Yep. Started with one that's still debatable about the very first letters, but I think there's something. It could
have very easily been Gordon Massey's son.
Mm-hmm. He found out about it or something where he wrote it.
And if you get more letters And somebody, who's to say that she didn't like look at the letters?
Because like,
and
what's to
write in the
say he
same-
was? Because there's other women. They said so. What's to
Oh,
say
yeah.
that like he got the wrong bus driver and he sent it to Mary? Instead?
Yeah.
That could have happened.
And the way it's written, like, I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't understand what kind of paper it's written on, though. Is that like the first grade?
Yeah, that's what it looks like, doesn't it?
It does, right. It's got like the dotted
Practice
line
your
in the
letters.
middle. Right, the dotted line in the middle. But yeah, like, I feel like I could.
They use colons
Recreate
a lot, too,
that.
in the one letter. I saw
Yeah.
that, too. It's really weird. Every other word's like a colons after it.
Right. And I don't, honestly, I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know exactly when to use colons. I know semicolons are lists. But I don't know when colons are officially supposed to. Like dashes. I don't know when dashes are supposed to. I use them all the time.
Yeah.
In legal documents, I will put a dash. But I don't really know exactly when you're supposed to use a dash. But yeah, you're right. Like there's a lot of colons, and people have said that about. They're like, but I think semicolon is for list. So if you're like, we're going on a camping trip and we need semicolon, tent, coffee maker.
Coffee maker.
But yeah, it's interesting. It really is like a crazy case because, yeah, man. Like somebody went to jail, somebody died.
I know. I mean, like she was probably, like you said, she was probably having the affair before the letters started. The letters could have came from his son, and then totally could have been something that she was like. I feel like when I saw the letter to her husband, it looked different.
Yes.
It was like written different than the.
And a lot of them were.
Yeah.
And back to the beginning, there's thousands of them.
Right.
All right, but I think we solved it.
Yeah.
I think we're solid. I think it was a collective of people.
Yeah.
Whether or not we named all the people, it remains to be seen. It probably will never be seen. But
by the way, too, there was a coroner apparently in that county at the time was like under charges of pedophilia or something like that.
Yes, I forgot all about that guy. He got convicted, right?
Yes, I thought there was a claim that Radcliffe got him off or whatever. Something, I don't know.
So, like, you have several different, like, high-ranking civil servants, we'll say, that are trying to keep their job and, their retirement and all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
And
so they were just opportunity, too. They were like, somebody was taking opportunity to call them out, and they were trying to bury shit as quick as they could. That's why they didn't check into the accident.
And Ohio is not like any stranger to that.
Yeah.
No, and I don't want to. I don't want to say specific examples because we're gonna get shut down. But
right.
But yeah, it happens a lot in Ohio. Ohio is becoming like Chicago. It's very corrupt, and yeah, this is like one of them. And it starts with something as simple as an affair, which I mean, like I say as simple as, but like Ohio, you have to know if you've ever lived there, is that it's very conservative. So an affair is a big deal. See, like if you're in California and you're like, they had an affair, they're like, and but like in Ohio
in 77,
that'll get somebody bounced out of office. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And whereas in California, they're like, well, how did he come back from the affair? So, yeah, I think we solved it. I think it's like a collective of people that took advantage of a situation and used it as an opportunity to expose other individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's unsolved to this day.
Yep.
You good with that?
I am.
All right, then. I'm Anthony.
I'm Brandon.
And this is Everything That's Weird. For show notes and merchandise, go to www.everythingthat'sweird.com. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And be sure to like, subscribe, and review anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening. See you next time.